What's up in War Eagle War Report family? Your guy Jones back with another morning drop. And today we are talking about Coach Hugh Freeze's comments as Auburn gets ready to take on Texas A&M. Let's get straight to it. Y'all know how we do right here, War Report style. Let's drop it on them.
You are now listening to the War Report.
Morning drop. It is Tuesday, November the 19th. Hopefully everybody's week is off to a great start. You got Ike Jones in here talking a little bit about Coach Hugh Freeze and his comments as Auburn gets prepared for Texas A&M. The morning drop, as always, is brought to you by the good folks over here at Rogue Shop. Make sure you all head over to rogueshop.com and use code REPORT to get a little something off at America's #1 online dispensary. That's the Rogue Shop. Again, use code REPORT. Get 15% off when you go over there. But Coach Hugh Freeze addressed the media about Texas A&M, and Texas A&M is going to be a difficult game. Make no mistake about it. This Texas A&M team is fierce defensively. They have a very physical run game, and they have a dual threat quarterback that they are deploying in the name of or in the person of Marcel Reed. So a lot of things to be game planning about, and Coach Hugh Freeze expressed this is going to be a tough challenge, and they have some things that they need to figure out, particularly how they are going to keep the momentum going, right? So he talked about, or the question was asked to Coach Freeze about how do they translate the energy and the excitement from one win over to the next, because that's an issue that Auburn has had this season. Is you come off the Kentucky win and you're hoping to be able to use that to spur you on and bring you some energy into that next game, and it just doesn't happen, right? You don't go into the next game and you don't use that to catapult you into that next opportunity. So how can they do that? How can they translate a win versus Louisiana Monroe into something bigger, and have that be a catalyst for potentially a win versus Texas A&M? Hear Coach Freeze talk about that.
Well, we need to get our playmakers involved early, and we need to win first down. I think when we've done those two things, we've been able to kind of get in a rhythm that gave us some confidence, and I think that showed Saturday and kind of continued throughout the game. And I think one of the secrets to that was us just not caring very much and saying, you know what, maybe it's, because the temptation when you're playing a really good defense like A&M is, man, we've got to figure out, we got to do a lot of things to try to keep them guessing on what kind of blocking scheme's coming, and then all of a sudden you're not playing with great confidence in what you're doing. And I think we've been guilty of that some this year, and I think our kids play a lot better when they feel comfortable that let's just go execute who we are. Now, are we good enough roster-wise right now to do that and win the games? I don't know, but I think that's probably the best chance and scenario for us to give our kids the chance to do it, and let's go see. So to answer your question, I think we won first down, and we were able to get into rhythms and get guys involved early, besides just Jarquez.
So Coach Hugh Freeze there talking about really what sounds like finding an identity offensively. And that is a crazy thing to say when you're going into your 11th game of the season, that Auburn really is still trying to figure out who they are as an offense, right? It hasn't looked good. But basically what what it distills down to is they need to just say, hey, this is who we are. I get it. Texas A&M is talented, and you want to try to keep them off balance, but we don't need to try to go and do anything fancy. We don't need to go try to install anything new. We need to go out there and decide this is how we are going to attack them, and this is who we are going to be. Let's install it and let's make it happen. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to do necessarily the same things that you've done every other week, but it does need to look like semblance of a particular game plan. We realize they don't do well against gap run scheme. They don't do well against zone, whatever it is. Let's utilize that, and let's make sure that we have a plan for how we want to do it and our counter off of that thing. That's just basic stuff, man. And it seems as if they're really struggling to do that, because it seems as if this offensive staff is trying too hard to be inventive and be creative and not finding ways to just, hey, We've got playmakers. Let's get the ball in the hands of the playmakers. What are we going to do to get uh, touches to Cam Coleman? We know we can turn around and hand the ball off to Jarquez Hunter. We absolutely have to do that. We will do that. And we'll talk more about the run game here in a minute. But how do we get Cam Coleman the ball? All right, we're just going to call this play for him. This is first look to Cam. If it's not there, Peyton, you need to go here, blah, blah, blah. But we're going to do a couple of those. We're going to run some stuff to get the ball in the hands of Malcolm Simmons. We're going to figure out how we can get our playmakers involved in the game at strategic points in the game, down in distance, all of those things. And that's just kind of basic stuff that I feel like, if we're being honest, a first year play caller and Derek Nix is he's still trying to figure out how to do that and not pack too much stuff into a game plan. And Coach Hugh Freeze is trying to figure out how to balance his want to go in there and really just kind of do the things that he's typically done and allowing them to do the things that they've done or need to do, excuse me, to be able to be better about what their game day decisions are going to be and how the installs are going to be. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how all of that pans out, but it is disappointing to hear week 11, they're still trying to figure some of that stuff out with this staff and this new collection of minds that are supposed to be all folks that know what Coach Hugh Freeze wants to do and how he wants to do that. That coupled with having a lot of young players at the receiver position trying to figure out how they can make sure that they're not putting too much on their shoulders and what can we block up effectively and what can our quarterback execute. Don't know what the health of Peyton Thorne's shoulder is going to be going into the game. There's just a lot of things that make this a very uh it's a soup sandwich. How do you put it all together? I don't know the answer to that. Um, now, let's move on from talking about the offense because we know the work in progress that the Auburn offense has been, or the work in non-progress, whatever that would be, that the Auburn offense has been so far this season. But onto some things that Coach Hugh Freeze talked about that were bright spots, and particularly he talked about the way in which DeMarcus Riddick really changed how Auburn was fundamentally able to play defense when he started getting more minutes. Let's hear him talk about DeMarcus Riddick and his potential impact on this Texas A&M game.
Yeah, you just answered it for me. I mean, we changed when we started playing him, and not that others weren't playing well in spots, but without someone that has the ability that can run and tackle those dual threat guys in open field, it's a problem. And we had that all last year and part of this year, and he's made a difference in that because he has length and can run.
So DeMarcus Riddick's ability to be able to run at his length is something that Coach Hugh Freeze says changed the way that they're able to play defense, specifically against the dual threat quarterbacks that Auburn has seen throughout the season. They don't have to necessarily, they can change how they're spying with those quarterbacks. They can change the way in which they defend because they have a guy that they feel confident in to be able to go run those quarterbacks down into Marcus Riddick. So it changes the way that you call your defenses. He didn't talk about them specifically, but the emergence of how Jay Crawford is playing on the outside and how Kayan Lee has continued to play on the outside changes how Auburn can play defense because you feel a little bit more confident with leaving those guys on an island out there one-on-one versus a wide receiver so that you have the ability to play differently inside, whether it's, having your safeties creep down and play and run support a little bit more. You don't have to play too high as much, right? Like you can go a little bit more press man on the outside. So you have the ability with a guy who can run down a quarterback. You've got DBs on the outside who you trust to be out there on that island a little bit more. And Auburn can be different and blitz differently on the interior. It allows for a guy like DJ Durkin when you have those skilled players that are able to do things and understand what they need to do, and they can just let their natural athleticism take over in certain instances to play faster, to be able to play a little bit more exotic on the interior. And it changes fundamentally how you play defense. So looking forward again to seeing how DJ Durkin decides he wants to deal with a very dynamic dual threat quarterback in Marcel Reed. And it sounds as if DeMarcus Riddick is going to be a portion of that. He also talked a little bit about Amaris Williams and how he's come in and been able to change a little bit of what they do. And that is definitely good to have waves of guys that you can send out there to be able to chase down a guy like Marcel Reed that's going to be able to do a lot with his legs and extending plays, but you want to be able to make sure that he's not able to run the ball effectively as well. So looking forward to seeing again how DJ Durkin and his staff decide that they want to try to bottle up a guy who can hurt you with both his arms and his legs in the person of Marcel Reed. Before we get over into the other portion of this, definitely want to take a little time out to talk to you about today's show sponsor, and it is brought to you today by Joy Mode. Make sure you head over to tryjoymode.com. 20% off plus free shipping is there when you use code RAPPORT. If you need a little bit more confidence when you are headed into action, if you're like the Auburn offense and you've had an inability to score consistently because you just haven't had the ability to finish, maybe you need to be able to use a little joy mode. So go to tryjoymode.com. 20% off plus free shipping is there for you when you use code RAPPORT. And that lets them know the folks at the War Report sent you more stamina, more ability to finish right there with joy mode. Hopefully, the Auburn offense is able to finish and keep their stamina and come away with a win this weekend versus Texas A&M. Coach Hugh Freeze also takes his time to go over and talk with fans over at Tiger Talk on Mondays, and we got a few comments from him. I wanted to highlight a few things that he talked about when he was over there specifically, and I mentioned we would come back to this earlier. The question was asked of him of one of the fans, like, can we expect Auburn to go out there and try to employ the power run game versus Texas A&M? Here's what Coach Hugh Freeze had to say in regard to that.
This defense of A&M is really, really talented. Yeah, they've got three probably first rounders in their front seven, and we've got to figure out a way certainly to run the football on them. And we do believe that we've been able to do that against most everybody we've played, and we're certainly going to have a plan to do that, and we do plan to stay balanced. But you better run the ball on these guys too, and so yes, you can expect to see us attempt it, and hopefully it's successful.
So absolutely, it's a part of the game plan. Yes, we are going to try to run the ball versus Texas A&M, but from what I'm hearing, and I don't like to read between the lines, and I know Coach Hugh Freeze hates when people put words in his mouth. I don't like people who put words in my mouth either, but it sounds as if they're saying that, listen, man, we're going to try to run the ball because you need to be balanced, but we need to be able to throw the football. Um, and it seems as if in a lot of these SEC games, they've come out early against teams and thought to themselves, teams are going to try to stop Jarquez Hunter. They're going to try to stop Jarquez Hunter. They're going to try to stop Jarquez Hunter. We need to throw the ball on early downs and figure out how we get the pass game going. Let's get our wide receivers out there and get them involved. So I feel like Auburn's going to go to the pass game early in this game to try to throw A&M off a little bit from the focus on Jarquez type of thing that they most teams have done when they come to play against Auburn. Um, I do think Texas A&M is a team that, like Kentucky, will feel confident in their ability for their front six or seven to be able to get the job done against the run. So Auburn's going to need to stay committed to the run and figure out, okay, can we play physically enough in the trenches to be able to run the ball against this team? Because if they can, you can control the flow of the game a lot more, and you give your quarterback time with some of the play action stuff that's available to you. So the quick pass game to try to counteract what A&M wants to be able to do with their pass rush, which they have absolutely ferocious pass rush guys out there. And Auburn has struggled to protect the passer, so you don't need to try to do a lot of long developing stuff. And they've got good corners on the outside too. This is a good Texas A&M defense, right? So Auburn's they're going to have to play a good. This is why you bring in 5-star recruits. They're going to need to make tough contested catches. They're going to need to bail out their quarterback at times when he's not making perfect throws. You're just going to need to step up and make big plays on Saturday in order to win this game. But a portion of that's got to be a commitment from this offensive staff to call run plays and figure out what can work in the run game for this offensive line to be able to block, and how the running backs can be able to impact that flow of those pass rushers, right? Because if you live in third and long, you're living in a nightmare realm against this Texas A&M defense. So looking forward to seeing what the plan is for them in the run game specifically. How are they going to get the run game going? How are they going to get that short passing game going to make sure that Auburn can stay on schedule? Because that's a big portion, staying on schedule and out of those third and long scenarios. Lastly, here, I just want to talk about something, and he's been asked about this a lot, and this is going to continue to be a topic as Auburn gets closer to early signing day about recruitment. Right? He was asked last week about kind of how it's going with re-recruiting the current roster and really closing out this current recruiting class. And he was asked again about this out there, and he gave a little bit more of a detailed answer when he was at Tiger Talk. So I just wanted you guys to hear what Coach Hugh Freeze had to say there.
Obviously, we got to get the 25 class signed on December the 4th, which, that this is the time of year that starts getting dicey with some. But our current players, we started having conversations during the dead period, not last week, but the prior week, with all of what we would consider to be our tier 1, tier 2 guys. Whether it's our collective and our personnel department, I honestly try to stay out of most of those until they send them to my office. But it's just it's very uncomfortable for me. I want to coach them. I want to develop a real, genuine relationship that's not based on money being a motivating factor, even though I'm happy that they get it, and I just don't enjoy being the one that has those conversations. So Jason Campbell and Will Redmond do an outstanding job of that. But we've already begun trying our best to be proactive because I don't think any of us like this fact, but here's one we better really understand. We think revenue sharing is coming in July of 25, which will be a good thing. But prior to that, and this run through December, January could get really, really, really wild. And it's just not fun to and there's no way to know what truth is. You have no idea if what is being said is truth, and so it's difficult, and that's why I try to stay out of as many as I can.
So Coach Freeze talking about kind of the nature of or the landscape of what's happening right now with collegiate sports in terms of the NIL process and having to re-recruit his roster. And he said, listen, we started that process during the dead week, really that bye week that they had. They're coming off of the Vanderbilt game of talking to who they consider to be tier 1 high priority guys. Let's figure out where they are and what things we need to do to try to be able to retain them. He said that Will Redmond, Jason Campbell have been the guys that are really spearheading that process and those conversations, and he gets involved as necessary with those, as far as just trying to figure out where those young men are in their mindset towards coming back to Auburn. And he needs to keep his arms around that, but he doesn't really want to have money conversations with them because he wants to be able to coach him and not have to talk about that, and let other people have those conversations. So interesting there. But the other thing that he said is just like the uncomfortable nature of kind of what's coming in the future, and he talked about timelines and really wanting to be able to have periods of time in December where he can focus on his family a little bit more and not have to be out there on the road, and just really the nature of what it is to be a collegiate football coach right now with all of the movement that happens with trying to re-recruit your roster and close out your recruiting class, and what those calendars look like. And really, when you start to see, coaches retiring and people considering taking jobs in the NFL and all this stuff, it's because of stuff like this. It's because the landscape is changing in collegiate football, and it's not what it used to be. And it's making it where you're having to really just continue. Like there is no break. You don't get time to be a human being, and it's a tough job, right? But they get paid millions of dollars to do it. And I know people aren't going to cry tears for collegiate football coaches that have 5 million, 6 million, some upwards of 10 plus $1 million per year salaries to go out here and do these jobs. But you do see kind of a hint of what Coach Hugh Freeze, or what a coach has to go through, in the words there of Coach Hugh Freeze. But I would love to know who those tier one and tier two guys are that they already have identified and said, hey, we need to go ahead and start having those conversations with them. And also, I'm pretty sure if players did not have conversations during that dead period, they realize they are not in tier one or two. But yeah, I would love to know who was on that list and how those conversations went. But we will see soon and soon enough, because in December, early signing day happens. And then very soon after that, the transfer portal will be open, and people will start making their declarations known for everybody out there. But first on the agenda, figure out how to get a win versus Texas A&M, and they have a mountain ahead of them in trying to do that. Texas A&M, in my opinion, one of the best defenses in the country, certainly one of the best defenses Auburn will have faced so far this season. Looking forward again to seeing how they decide to attack them offensively, and what plan DJ Durkin and his staff come up with defensively. That's it. That's all I got for you guys. I want to hear your comments. Specifically, talk to me about the things that you would like to see offensively from Auburn and how they can attack Texas A&M. And then let's talk about, how do you feel about that matchup of this Auburn defense, particularly guys like DeMarcus Riddick versus Marcel Reed? If you're a Texas A&M fan out there, go ahead, let me know how y'all are feeling about that. But before you get out of here, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, all of those things. Once again, the morning drop, as always, brought to you by the good folks over at the Rogue Shop, rogueshop.com, and using code REPORT gets you 15% off sleep, stress, anxiety, pain relief, all there for you at the Rogue Shop. Again, use code REPORT to get you 15% off. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, share the content with somebody. We will be back at you with more great War Report content later. But until the next time, and as always, War Eagle.